This idea, khair and shar. Human beings are taken into account for the good they do and the evil they do. The Qur'an says, لَهَا مَا كَسَبَتْ, for the soul is the good that it earned, وَعَلَيْهَا مَكْتَسَبَتْ, and against the soul is the evil that it has acquired. So we are taken into account for good and evil that we do in the world. The Muslims, the Qur'an is emphasizing the doing of good actions. Now, one of the words that it uses for this is hasanat. And the opposite is sayyat. Hasanat, the root word is beauty. In other words, there's an idea that a good action is a congruous action. It is a harmonic action. That a bad action is aesthetically unpleasing. It is cacophonic. It is ugly. That the human being by nature recognizes beauty and recognizes good. And this is the idea in the Qur'an. It says, وَهَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْنِ, we guided the human being to the two roads of good and evil. That there is something inherent within the human being. Now if you look at this in terms of the animal kingdom, when animals do something, we do not put moral judgment on it. If a snake bites and kills a child, we do not say it's an evil snake. I mean, people might do that metaphorically, but they don't, there's not a moral component there. It's simply being itself. And there's a Rumi tells a story about the turtle and the scorpion and the frog. Right, they're at the side of the river. And the scorpion asks the frog, give me a ride across the river so I don't have to walk around or across the lake. The frog says, I'm not stupid. If I give you a ride, you'll sting me. And the scorpion says, that's ridiculous. Think about this. If I sting you, we'll both sink and drown. So the frog says, that makes sense. Takes him across. Halfway across, the scorpion stings the frog. The frog says, why'd you do that? He says, my nature. Right? So the idea then is that there is within the animal world natures that they cannot change. If a lion is hungry and it sees you, it sees lunch. It does not see you as, I'm going to do something really evil today. I'm going to go eat this poor person. It's just fulfilling its nature. When a human being eats another human being, right? Like that guy Dower or whatever his name was. Yeah, Dahmer. There's something we say that is sick. Why? What is the difference between the lion eating the human being and this guy eating the human being? The moral component. We say he should know better. That's a breach of the social contract. The person has gone out of its boundaries. And this is very important because in the Qur'an, there is an idea of hudud, of boundaries, and that the human being is morally bound to stay within the boundaries and not transgress them. And the word in Arabic for an evildoer is fasiq, which comes from a root word when the seed splits and it comes out of the shell. So the fasiq, the evildoer, is the one that splits the protective boundaries of the hudud. Now these are seen, the hudud of Allah, which are the sharia, the sacred law. These are seen as not simply arbitrary laws. Don't do this, don't do that. They are protective laws from the Muslim perspective. These are laws designed to maintain integrity within the society. When the Qur'an says, "La taqrabu zina," do not go near fornication. Why? It says, because it's a fahisha, it's a perversion, wasa'a sabila, and it leads down a terrible road. So the idea is that, look, this is not simply an arbitrary law. There are consequences that are related to this transgression that will have wretched effects in your culture and in your civilization.
I know that Islam and other faiths reject homosexuality as a perversion. How do you counter when you talk about the very nature? We all know people that are born as children. You see them acting feminine in their boys.
Yeah.
Acting their
femininity.
They make no choice. They just from the little kids, you can tell.
Femininity is not, there's nothing, it's not encouraged for a male. But a ma'boon is mentioned in the books of fiqh, a feminine person. Somebody who acts effeminate is mentioned that it's undesirable that he leads the prayer. But there's no moral stigma there. You're not saying that this person is bad or evil. When that person makes a choice to transgress boundary. Now, see, the thing is here, the idea of impulse. I don't know because I haven't been, that's not my experience of the world, right? I've been attracted to the opposite sex. That does not mean that I don't recognize a handsome man if I see them. I think it's natural for us to recognize beauty, right? There's an attraction to beautiful people, whether it's a male or a female. I think that's quite normal. From the Islamic perspective, if there is an impulse, then what is demanded of the individual is that they suppress that. So, from the Muslim point of view, if a person does have homosexual impulses or desires, which obviously there are people that have that, the Muslims would say that is the same as somebody having an impulse to steal. That they like something, they want it, and they desire to steal it. They have to say, no, I will not transgress the boundaries, that there are implications. And the implications, there's an idea within Western culture, modern Western culture, that as long as I don't harm anybody else, it's okay. From the Muslim point of view, there is a harm when it emerges into the public space. In other words, as far as the Muslims are concerned, what people do behind their closed doors is their own business. That is not my area of judgment. If I see an effeminate man, I should not assume that he's a homosexual by Islamic law. That's not my place. If somebody is openly doing these things, that is what becomes condemned. When there's an open breach. The same with alcohol. Somebody that makes wine in their house and drinks wine, that's between them and God. The minute they step out into the public space, then that is where the Sharia says no. Right? So in terms of Islamic law, what applies to them in this world is only what moves into the public space, not what's in the private space. But in terms of the next world, we believe that God takes people to account for the public and the private space. So that's really the way I think the Muslims would look at it. And the Prophet said that from my community there will be different types of homosexuality. He said there will be homosexuality of the glance, and homosexuality of touch, and then homosexuality of the action. It's in the hadith, yeah. And it's also considered one of the signs of the end of time and I'm going to talk about when we get to the end of time, with homosexuality and lesbianism become very prevalent according to the Prophet Muhammad. It is one of the signs of the end of time. And he actually said that men would marry men and women would marry women. That is in one of the hadiths. Now, in terms of are we predetermined to hell? Or are we predetermined? Which is obviously a question that your students are going to ask you. From the Muslim point of view, no one gets to paradise with their actions, but no one gets there without their actions. In other words, there is an idea that we cannot be grateful enough for the gift of life, for the gift of sight, speech, hearing, power, volition, all of these things. And therefore, anything that we do is still a shortcoming in relation to what we owe God. There is that idea. So there is definitely an idea, like in the Christian religion, of grace, that you are saved by grace. The Christians would see it as through the blood of Christ. The Muslims would see it as through the grace of God, right? By the rahmah, the mercy of God. But the Qur'an very clearly says, لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. Man, the human being, only has what they strive for. So you will see your actions. And your actions, you are taken to account for your actions.